Hello everyone, I'm Mr.Graveveil. Before we start, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos like this. Now, let's begin. My name is Caleb Monroe. I'm 29 from Ohio, and I made the worst decision of my adult life 3 months ago. I don't even know how to start this without sounding like a lunatic. My two best friends, let's just call them Jared and Luke, are the only ones who know what really happened. Not even our families know the full truth. We agreed to keep it that way. We weren't planning to get involved in anything dangerous. It started with a road trip, something simple. I've always been into weird nature stuff, especially cryptids like Bigfoot. That fascination goes way back. Luke and Jared shared that same curiosity. So when I suggested driving up to a remote stretch of forest in northern Michigan for a harmless exploration, they were all in. It was supposed to be fun. Something to laugh about over drinks later. Tuesday morning, we packed Jared's old Nissan, loaded up with cheap gear, and hit the road early. The GPS showed the town was barely a dot on the map, deep in the kind of wilderness where your phone starts losing signal 10 miles out. I remember the mood in the car, hype, joking, the usual. Jared cranked some old punk playlist and we argued about which state had the best hiking. Then the trees started thickening and the road narrowed. We passed a faded wooden sign that simply read, Cold Rock. That was the name of the town. Sounded made up. Might as well have been. Everything changed the moment we entered it. There were maybe 6 buildings, total gas station, a diner, and what looked like a repair shop. A couple of old houses behind them. No welcome signs, no traffic. The streets were empty except for 2 people standing near the gas station, both staring at us like we were the first outsiders in years. No one smiled. We found the motel easily. The sign said just motel in glowing orange letters. The building itself looked decent from the outside, at least better than the rest of the place. But something about the silence there, it didn't feel empty. It felt watched. I brushed it off. We were there to explore the woods, not worry about some quiet town. The inside of the motel smelled like stale tobacco and something older, like a place that had forgotten time was passing. Yellowed walls, peeling paint, carpets stained with decades of footsteps. Behind the counter stood a man who looked like he hadn't left the building in years. Mid-60s maybe, dressed in an old flannel shirt and suspenders, a cigarette dangling from his lips like it was part of him. He didn't look surprised to see me. He stared for a second longer than normal, then muttered, "Name?" "Caleb Monroe. We've got a reservation for 4 nights." He tapped at an old computer that hummed like it was on life support. 4 nights. That'll be $200. Cash or card? Cash, I answered, handing it over. As he counted the bills, I decided to ask, "So, people ever report strange stuff out in the woods?" He froze. Not like he didn't hear me, like something inside him stopped working. After a moment, he slowly looked up. "You're not planning on going out there, are you?" "Maybe, just hiking, nothing crazy." He leaned on the counter. "You boys think it's all fun. A story for the internet. But people don't come back. Or they come back wrong." His voice was dry, like dust settling in an empty room. Before I could ask more, he tossed the room key onto the counter. An actual metal key, scratched and worn. "Don't say I didn't warn you." Then he turned and walked away without another word. I stood there, holding that cold metal key, suddenly not so sure about anything. We dropped our gear in the room and barely spoke about the strange vibe from the clerk. Maybe it was just small-town paranoia. Maybe we were overthinking. Jared claimed 1 bed, Luke took the other, and I settled into the armchair by the window, watching the wind pick up outside. By early afternoon, we were ready. We couldn't load any maps, no service, but I managed to pull up directions to a nearby patch of state land before the signal dropped again. Just 7 miles out. Seemed easy. We drove through winding roads as the trees got thicker, their shadows swallowing the daylight even though it wasn't close to dusk. When we reached the trailhead, I felt that same unease from the motel. The forest looked wrong, too dense, too quiet. No birdsong, just wind. We got out, grabbed our gear. Headlamps, water, snacks. Luke, always overly cautious, brought his sidearm. I brought a roll of orange ribbon to mark the trail. But the footprints were clear in the soft ground, so we figured we'd follow those instead. That was the mistake. The walk was uneventful at first. We joked, took pictures. But the deeper we went, the harder it became to tell which direction we'd come from. After about an hour, the first flake started to fall. 10 minutes later, it turned into a blizzard. Our footprints began to vanish before our eyes. Shit, I muttered. We need to head back now. I didn't have to explain why. Everyone understood. We turned around and started moving fast, trying to retrace our steps. But the trail was gone. Snow fell harder, covering everything. The trees blurred together. There was no way to tell how deep we were. 1 mile or 10, who knew? We had no markers, no compass, no signal. And daylight was fading fast. The silence out there was unnatural. No wind now, no wildlife. Just the heavy hush of snowfall and our boots crunching through it. My breath felt tight. Every step forward felt like a step deeper into something we weren't supposed to find. We stopped when we heard it. A voice, faint, distant, echoed through the trees. Hey, it didn't make sense. No one knew we were out there. We hadn't told the motel guy where we were going. No one had cell service. We shouted back instinctively, "Over here!" Another voice answered, a little closer this time. "Over here." We ran toward the sound. I remember thinking help had come, but something was wrong. There was no flashlight beam, no footsteps besides ours. No one called out again. And then we saw footprints in the snow, but they weren't ours. They were bare feet, in freezing snow. Human-shaped, but off. The toes looked too long. The prints were deeper than they should have been. We stood in silence, staring at them, when something moved between the trees. Quick. Too fast for an animal that size. Just a blur of motion and branches snapping. Luke whispered, "This isn't right." My hands were shaking. We formed a tight circle, backs to each other, shining our headlamps in every direction. The snow muffled everything, but now we heard twigs snapping. Not random, controlled. Like something circling us. I caught a flicker of light in the distance. "Look," I pointed. It was faint. 2 glowing orbs through the tree's headlights, maybe. A car. Without thinking, we ran. We didn't hear it at first, but something followed. The footsteps behind us were heavy, fast. Not animal, not normal. I turned once and I swear I saw him, the motel clerk. But he wasn't right. His eyes were wide and white, no pupils. His expression blank. And he was barefoot. We ran harder than I think any of us ever had. I couldn't feel my legs, just the pounding of my heart and the breath burning in my chest. The lights ahead grew brighter. They were headlights. A car, salvation. But I could hear him behind us. His breathing wasn't normal. It was deep, guttural, almost animalistic. And it was getting closer. "Don't look back," I told myself. "Just move." Branches whipped against our arms. Snow flew into our faces. Jared tripped once but caught himself, barely. We were close, maybe 50 feet from the clearing. Then the breathing stopped. That silence hit harder than the sound itself. I turned around, just for a second. No one, nothing moved behind us, but I knew he'd been there. We broke through the tree line and staggered into the clearing where we had parked. The car sat right where we left it. Jared fumbled his keys, hands shaking, clicking the unlock button over and over. We threw the doors open, jumped in, slammed them shut, locked everything. I looked back once more. The woods were still, no sign of him. Jared started the engine, tires screeching as we peeled away. No one spoke for a full minute. Then Luke finally whispered, "We're grabbing our stuff and getting the hell out." I nodded, too out of breath to answer. But when we got back to the motel, nothing made sense anymore. The motel lights were still on when we pulled in. Everything looked the same, too much the same. We hadn't even turned off the engine when I saw him. The clerk, standing behind the reception counter, calm, dry clothes. No sign he'd just chased us through the forest. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Jared stepped out first. Luke and I followed, moving slow, unsure. When we opened the front door, the clerk looked up. "What the hell is going on?" I asked, my voice shaking. He looked at us like we were crazy. "You boys look like you saw a ghost." "You were out there," Luke said. "You chased us." The clerk frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I haven't left this place all evening." I stared at him. His shoes were dry. His hands didn't shake. He didn't even look out of breath. "I warned you," he said softly. "I told you not to go in those woods." "You think this is a joke?" Jared snapped. "Whatever game this is, we're not playing." "I'm not playing anything," he said. "You should go back to your room. Lock the door. I'll call the sheriff. Someone needs to know what's out there." We didn't move. "I'll explain everything," he added, picking up the phone. 10 minutes, we stood in silence. I didn't want to go back into that room, but part of me needed answers, even if they were worse than I imagined. So we turned around and walked back down the hallway and waited. But that feeling never left, like something still hadn't let go of us. I hadn't planned on stopping that night. If it weren't for the flashing lights in my rearview mirror, I probably would have driven straight through to California. But the officer who pulled me over told me every one of my rear lights was out, brake, tail, all of them. At first, I assumed it was a bulb issue. But later, the mechanic said it was something deeper, a wiring problem that had probably been deteriorating for weeks. The cop let me off with a warning, but the encounter rattled me. I didn't want another run-in like that. Not out here in Arizona, 2 days into a cross-country drive. I figured I'd find a nearby town, crash for the night, and take care of it first thing in the morning. I had no idea how badly I was about to miscalculate. The next few exits came and went. Most were just gas stations and fast food joints. Then I saw a green highway sign, faded and barely reflective, announcing a town about 20 miles off the interstate. It looked old, like it hadn't been updated in decades. But it was past 2 a.m., and I was tired enough to overlook how weird that was. I took the exit. The road stretched into the dark like a forgotten limb of the highway system, cracked and narrowing. As I drove, the asphalt turned to gravel, then to dirt. There wasn't a good place to turn around, and something about reversing down a dirt road in the desert felt worse than just pushing forward. After a couple of miles, a thick fog rolled in, unexpected, dense and wet. It clung to my windshield like breath on cold glass. Then, just as suddenly, it cleared. That's when I saw it, a wooden sign at the edge of the mist, its paint barely legible. I could make out the word "Welcome," but the town's name was either too faded or deliberately scratched out. A few yellow lights flickered ahead, no neon, no motion, just stillness. I didn't know the name of the place. I still don't, really. Maybe I just don't want to say it. The town was quiet. Not the kind of quiet you get late at night, but the kind that feels practiced, preserved. The buildings looked like they belonged in a photograph from the 1950s. A barber shop with painted windows. A post office with peeling white paint. Only one place had its lights on, a building with a flickering sign that simply read, "Hotel." I parked out front and stepped inside without grabbing anything from the car. I just wanted a bed. The lobby smelled like dust and floral cleaner. Faint music played from a radio somewhere behind the desk. A man stood there waiting, tall, thin, with deep bags under his eyes and a head completely bald. His posture was stiff, like he was forcing himself to stand still. He greeted me with a monotone yet polite voice. But something was off. He looked in my direction, but never at me. His eyes drifted slightly to the side, like he was focused on something a few inches behind my face. I signed in. He handed me a key, an actual brass key, not a card, and told me I was in room 6. No elevator, no questions. The hallway upstairs creaked under my feet. My room looked like it had been lifted straight from someone's grandmother's house. Quilted bedspread, faded wallpaper, a doily on the dresser. No TV, just a small radio with a broken dial. The silence buzzed in my ears. I crashed hard. No dreams, just a long stretch of darkness until the late morning sun woke me. I had planned to get up early, but it was nearly noon. My body felt leaden. I took a hot shower, the old pipes groaning behind the walls. Something about the place felt heavier in daylight. I got dressed and grabbed my phone, planning to find a quick bite and look up nearby mechanics. But something strange happened. The map app showed only a gray screen, no roads, no labels, nothing. I checked the signal. Full bars, but the name of the town wasn't listed. Google search turned up nothing either. It was like the place didn't exist. I headed down to the lobby to ask for help. Same man at the desk, standing like he hadn't moved all night. He looked just as tired, maybe more. I asked if there was a place to eat nearby. Without blinking, he pointed down the street and said, 3 blocks, you'll see it. The walk was pleasant. Warm sun, light breeze. The sidewalks were spotless, the grass trimmed. Yet everything felt staged, like a movie set where no one yelled, "Cut." The diner had a vintage sign hang above its door, and the inside looked like something out of a museum. Chrome stools, glass pie displays, booths in mint condition. Prices were decades behind. The food was surprisingly good. The waitress, an older woman, smiled and made small talk. She was the first person who seemed genuinely kind. Asked where I was from, what brought me there, how long I was staying. I answered vaguely, and she didn't push. Then her tone changed. "Storm's coming tonight," she said, casually wiping the counter. "You'll want to be indoors before dark." I nodded, thanked her, and paid. As I stepped outside, the breeze felt heavier. The sky was still blue, the air calm, but her words clung to me. I hadn't seen a single cloud. On my way to the garage, a white car eased past me on the street, sleek, spotless, expensive. I couldn't tell the make, just that it didn't belong in a town like this. Behind the wheel was a man in a white suit, smiling wide as he passed. His eyes locked onto mine. I gave a half wave. He didn't return it. The mechanic's shop looked more like an oversized shed than a business. One bay, one man. He was wiping his hands on a rag as I pulled in, and his expression hardened the second he saw me. I explained the wiring issue. He nodded slowly, offering vague technical terms that I didn't understand. Midway through a sentence, he stopped. "Look," he said flatly, "I probably can't fix this till tomorrow." "That's fine," I replied. "I'm not in a rush." He blinked, clearly irritated. Then came the push. "You sure you want to stay here? You could head west, get it looked at somewhere bigger. Or maybe the next town over, it's nicer, better shops." I smiled politely. "I'm all right here." That didn't sit well with him. He looked past me through the shop window at nothing. "Just places like this, not much to do." His tone had softened into something almost pleading. I thanked him and walked away. As I reached the door, he called after me, voice flat again. "If you're staying, storm's coming. Hunker down." It didn't match his earlier attitude. I left without replying, but the message echoed in my head. Everyone in this town was trying to get rid of me quietly, but urgently. And that was starting to scare me more than anything else. That evening I stayed in. I didn't feel like walking around anymore. Something about the way the mechanic had spoken, like a warning disguised as advice, had settled deep in my gut. I laid on the bed, half watching Netflix on my phone, snacking on vending machine junk. Around 9 p.m., I decided to call it a night. As I brushed my teeth, I realized I'd left my toiletry bag in the car at the shop. Annoyed, I headed downstairs to ask for a disposable toothbrush. The lobby was empty. The bell on the front desk went unanswered. The old radio still hummed a static lullaby in the background, but the bald man was nowhere to be seen. I waited, leaning on the desk, listening. Nothing. After 5 minutes, I stepped outside. The air was thick and warm, not stormy, just wrong. There was no wind, no sound, except footsteps. A stream of people moved silently down the middle of the street, all walking in the same direction toward the center of town. Men, women, even children. Some in pajamas, others in coats. No one spoke. No one looked at me. When I called out to ask what was happening, they didn't break stride. It wasn't hypnotic. It was deliberate. I followed, walking along the sidewalk. Curiosity overrode caution. The group grew as we approached the square. At the center stood a stage, illuminated by old floodlights. A crowd gathered, all facing forward. On the stage were 3 men, one in a dark suit, one in burlap rags, and one unmistakable in his bright white suit. He was smiling, and he was staring directly at me. I stayed at the edge of the crowd. No one acknowledged me, not even a glance. The man in the white suit remained fixed on me, smiling like he knew something I didn't. His expression never changed, like he'd been waiting for this moment. As the last of the townspeople arrived, the 3 men stepped forward. The white-suited one spoke first, his voice oddly clear despite the distance. "Thank you," he said, "for once again allowing me the honor of service." The crowd didn't move. He turned his eyes back to me as he continued. "I hope tonight's ceremony enlightens all of us as much as it will." Him. Several men brought forward a wooden table, more like a door bolted to makeshift legs. The man in burlap stepped up, lay face down on the table without protest. The white-suited man began chanting, not loud, not theatrical. Low and rhythmic, like a ritual someone had performed many times before. The words sounded Latin, but I didn't recognize any of them. The stage lights flickered. A pulse of dread hit me. I backed away, inch by inch. No one stopped me. I turned and started walking fast, heart pounding. I didn't want to see what came next. Then, his voice rose, cutting through the air. "Leaving so soon?" I didn't turn around. I just walked faster. He said something else, and I heard movement. Running. Heavy footsteps behind me. I looked over my shoulder. 3 men were charging toward me. One of them was the bald hotel clerk, still in his stiff uniform. I ran. My shoulder throbbed. My legs burned. I cut through alleyways until I reached the garage. My car was still out front. I fumbled for the keys as they closed in. I got the door open, half inside when hands grabbed my arm, yanking hard. I kicked, braced, managed to twist the key and slam the gas. A sharp pop exploded through my shoulder as it dislocated, but I kept going. The car surged forward. One by one, their grips slipped away. I didn't stop until I saw headlights, real ones. Blue and red flashing behind me. A sheriff's deputy stepped out, face pale when I told him where I'd come from. He didn't take notes, didn't ask questions, just stared at me and said, "Don't ever talk about that place again." I don't even know why I'm writing this. Maybe I just want someone out there to say I wasn't wrong, that I didn't screw everything up beyond repair. I moved to this town a few months ago. I won't name it. Not because I'm scared of getting tracked down, but because I genuinely think it's safer if as few people as possible ever look this place up. Most folks here don't even use the internet much, which is exactly why I picked it. The official reason? Rent. It's stupid cheap to live here. I figured I could spend a year working remotely, saving money, laying low. Big cities pay well, sure, but the cost of living eats you alive. I wanted the opposite. Somewhere quiet, remote, affordable. But the real reason? Research. I came across something. A strange local belief tied to this town. Every 6 months, 2 people, always one man and one woman, just vanish. No remains. No reports, just gone. The townsfolk don't talk about it. But it's a known thing here if you dig deep enough. They treat it like some kind of unspoken truth. A ritual. A pattern. It wasn't a tourist trap or a ghost tour town. That's what made it fascinating. It felt real. I told myself I could study it, write about it maybe, even if no one ever believed it. That was enough for me. I rented a modest apartment in a 4-story building. Nothing special. Bedroom, bathroom, a small kitchen separated by a counter. It had that worn-down coziness that I kind of liked. I didn't know anyone, but that wasn't new for me. I'm not exactly the social butterfly type. Still, I made an effort. Met a few neighbors. But the one person who really mattered was Noah. He lived in the unit across from mine. Same age, more or less. Kind, soft-spoken. The kind of guy who gets excited about crystals and conspiracy theories and underground tunnels. Total believer in the paranormal. We got along surprisingly well. Honestly, he was the first friend I made here. Maybe the only one. And I think that's what makes this so much harder to live with. It started with a slip-up. A casual comment, an offhand remark I shouldn't have made. That's how Noah found out the real reason I came to this town. He lit up. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" he said, eyes wide like a kid on Christmas morning. "I didn't know you were into that kind of stuff." I wasn't, not like him. For me it was academic. Curiosity, not belief. But how could I say that to his face, with that kind of excitement lighting him up? "I guess it didn't come up," I mumbled. Truth is, I think he already suspected. He'd always share his latest discovery: broken patterns in tree bark, coordinates hidden in street signs, theories about the town's energy, like he knew I was silently eating it up. And I kind of was secondhand. From then on, he seemed almost proud, like I had passed some kind of test. I wasn't just his neighbor anymore. I was a confidant, someone who understood. And I didn't mind, not at all. I liked Noah. He was strange, but in a way that felt harmless. Sincere. We'd talk late sometimes, about the town's weirdness, about the silence around certain subjects. He was always the one wondering out loud. I just listened. Until that morning. He knocked on my door at 9 a.m. Way too early. I opened it still half asleep, and he was buzzing. Not hyper, exactly. Just wired, frantic. "I think I've figured something out," he said. He always thought that, but this time he didn't push inside. Just stood there, restless. "I need a favor, a big one, but say no if you can't." That woke me up a bit. "What kind of favor?" "I just need someone, in case things go wrong, if I get in too deep. I need an exit. Like, if you call me, I come pick you up?" "Yeah, basically." I stared at him. "That's your major favor?" "It might be dangerous." He looked so serious. I hesitated. But then I nodded. "Text or call, I'll be there." "We're friends." He lit up. "Thank you." And just like that, he was gone. Back to his apartment. Carrying out a box later that day, waving at me. "Supplies," he called, and grinned. That night, around 9 p.m., my phone lit up. A message from Noah, just an address. No details, no explanation. Seriously, I groaned. It was dark out. Cold. I wasn't exactly thrilled about driving across town for what might be another one of his wild goose chases. But I had promised. He seemed serious that morning. I reminded myself he could be in trouble. Something about the way he'd said dangerous had stuck with me. I forced myself up, threw on a coat, grabbed my keys. The cold slapped me in the face the moment I stepped outside. As I reached the parking lot, my steps slowed. Someone was leaning against my car. A man. Still, unmoving. Like he had been waiting. I stopped. He looked at me. just stared. The light from the building didn't quite reach his face. His features felt blurry somehow, as if I wasn't meant to remember them. "You are not ready," he said. My breath caught. His voice had that flat, final quality that makes the hairs on your arms rise. I clutched my keys tighter. "What do you mean?" I asked, barely a whisper. He tilted his head slightly, annoyed. "You haven't prepared." That was it. No other explanation. My instinct screamed to run. This wasn't just some drunk guy or someone looking for a fight. There was something deeply wrong about him. Something human under the surface. But Noah was waiting. I took a step forward. The man didn't move, just stared. Like he was watching a car crash happen in slow motion. "Are you sure you want to go there?" he asked. His voice was quieter this time, almost tired. I hesitated, then nodded. He gave me one last glance, cold and impersonal, and turned to walk away. Even as he disappeared, I couldn't recall what he looked like. Nothing stuck. Not his hair, not his clothes, not the shape of his face. Like my memory had been scrubbed clean. I got in the car and just sat there shaking. For a second, I thought about turning back, pretending this whole thing never happened. But a promise is a promise. I started the engine and headed for the address. The address led me to the edge of town, a warehouse. Massive, quiet, rotting from the inside. The kind of place that didn't just feel abandoned, it felt forgotten. I parked a bit down the road. Didn't want to pull up too close. My heart was thudding in my chest, a constant, heavy beat. I told myself to breathe. Just find Noah. Get in. Get out. The front door was boarded up, or had been. Someone had pried the boards loose. A crowbar leaned against the wall. Noah, no doubt about it. The inside was worse. Cold, stale air hit me as I stepped in. My phone was at 30%, but I had no choice. I turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness like a blade through fog. Dust swirled everywhere, coating my throat. I moved slowly, sweeping the light across the space. Every creak beneath my feet sounded too loud, too sharp. The place was enormous, full of empty corners and unseen shadows. "Noah?" I called. My voice came back to me, bouncing off the concrete. "Noah, Noah, nothing." I pressed forward. The warehouse felt like a maze. Long corridors, blocked doors, broken glass, and silence. Oppressive silence. Then I heard it. Faint. A voice. "Ange, hurry." I froze. It was him. It had to be. I broke into a half-run, ducking around support beams and piles of junk. My flashlight barely kept up. Everything felt off balance. Like I wasn't supposed to be here. Like something didn't want me here. The corridors twisted. One turn, then another. Suddenly eyes. Shiny, beady, low to the ground. I startled, dropped my phone. The light tumbled with it. I crouched to pick it up. Something ran over my hand. I jerked back with a noise that barely passed for human. Shining the light again, whatever it was had gone. Just dust and silence. Then I heard it again. "Ange!" Louder, closer. He was near. I had to keep going. But something inside me whispered, "Turn around. Leave." Another scream rang out. Sharp. Panicked. Too late for second thoughts. I ran. I found the stairs at the end of a corridor, rusted metal leading down into the dark. No hesitation, I just went. Somehow I knew that's where he was. One hand on the rail, one gripping my phone, flashlight flickering. I moved as fast as I dared. The air thickened as I descended, wet, cold, and foul. Then the stairs curved. That's when I saw him. Noah was balanced on a table at the center of the room. His eyes wide, breath heaving. Below him was a mass rats, mice, roaches, ants, even birds circling from above. It looked like a flood of living things, writhing and shifting, swarming over one another. The table rocked every time he moved. He waved a dead flashlight at the crows. The floor was alive. His phone dropped, disappeared into the swarm. He fought to stay up, but it was clear he wasn't going to last. Then he saw me. I didn't move. His face twisted in a way I can't forget. There was fear, yes, but also a flicker of hope. I saw him mouth something, maybe my name, maybe help. I was frozen. The table jerked, and he slipped. He didn't scream, just vanished beneath them, and then they turned. Every tiny eye in that rotting basement shifted toward me. The silence shattered. I heard them skittering, clawing, coming for me. I ran. I don't even remember getting back to the stairs. I remember the sound behind me, the claws scraping, the squeaks, the flapping wings. I remember the panic, the way my hands slipped on the rail, the way the halls all looked wrong on the way back, like the walls were closer. I remember seeing the car and throwing myself into the driver's seat, then the mirror. That writhing mass coming after me. I hit the gas. Only after I'd driven far enough to believe they weren't following did I pull over and let myself fall apart. My whole body was shaking. I wanted it to be a hallucination, a breakdown, anything but real. But hours later, lying in bed, my phone buzzed. A message. "Why did you leave us?" from Noah's number. "This isn't over. If I don't figure it out, I already know what happens next." It was one of those nights where time drags like wet cement. I couldn't sleep. The city was quiet, unusually quiet, and my apartment felt colder than usual. I'd been on my couch for hours, phone in hand, scrolling through nothing, trying not to think too hard. That kind of night. When the buzz came, I almost dropped the phone. One vibration, one alert. It was from a security app I hadn't opened in years, some leftover software linked to an old camera system at my uncle's corner store. The one he shut down after a break-in, back when I was in college. The camera should have been offline. The building hadn't had power for years, but there it was. Motion detected. Front entrance, 2:27 a.m. I stared at it. Probably a false alarm. A rat. Or maybe the system finally glitched into life after being dead for so long. Still, my thumb tapped it. The live feed opened. And I froze. His store was lit. Dim fluorescent lighting flickered over worn tile floors. Shelves were visible through the grainy lens, aligned, stocked. And the door? It was cracked open. Just enough for someone to slip in, or out. I sat up, every part of my body suddenly tense. That place had been closed for nearly 6 years. The windows were always dark. The door had been boarded up. Why was there light? Why now? I kept staring, hoping to see something move. But the frame stayed eerily still. That stillness wasn't peace. It felt expectant, like the feed was watching me back. I told myself not to go. There was no reason. It wasn't mine. It wasn't my problem. But the longer I watched, the more I felt like I had been summoned. By 2:35, I was grabbing my hoodie and keys, telling myself I'd just do a quick drive-by. Just check. No need to get out of the car. 10 minutes tops. But something inside me already knew this wasn't going to be a quick look. I wasn't going to like what I'd find. And deep down, I think that store had been waiting for me. The streets were emptier than usual as I drove. No headlights, no pedestrians, not even the hum of late-night traffic. Just the soft murmur of my engine, like it didn't want to disturb anything around us. It was the kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels watched. I turned onto the block where my uncle's store used to sit, nestled between a closed laundromat and a tire shop long out of business. I recognized the cracked sidewalk before I saw the building. It was exactly how I remembered, and yet different. The old faded sign still hung above the entrance, letters barely clinging to the metal frame. The windows were still dirty, but I noticed fresh smudges near the glass, like someone had recently touched them. The flickering interior light was unmistakable now. There was no mistaking it. The power was on. I pulled over and cut the engine, letting the silence swallow me whole. My heart was beating hard, not fast, but like it had weight. Like every thud meant something. The front door stood ajar. Not wide open, just enough to unsettle. I hadn't seen that door move since my uncle nailed it shut. Yet here it was, like it had been waiting to be opened again. I stayed in the car for a while, trying to convince myself this wasn't real. Maybe someone broke in, rewired the electricity, started squatting. That would make sense, but nothing about this felt like squatting. It didn't feel chaotic. It felt intentional. There was a single fluorescent bulb flickering above the entrance, casting an uneven glow across the sidewalk. The rest of the street was drowned in darkness. The light felt out of place, like it didn't belong to this decade. I stepped out of the car slowly. The air smelled like dust and something faintly chemical, like old plastic and cold metal. The kind of smell you only notice in places forgotten by time. As I approached, I realized the strangest part. There were no footprints in the dust on the ground outside, no signs of life. And yet, the door was open. The moment I stepped inside, I felt a shift, like walking into a room that remembered me. The temperature dropped instantly. It wasn't just cold. It was the kind of chill that clings to your skin, not from air conditioning, but from something older. I took a few steps in, careful not to let the door slam behind me. It stayed open, barely. Inside, the store looked wrong. It was too orderly. The shelves were full, aligned like someone had arranged them recently, yet the items were mismatched in time. Some snacks hadn't been sold in over a decade. Others looked like they'd been stocked yesterday. There was no layer of dust, no trash, just this sterile stillness that didn't belong in a place left alone for years. The lights above buzzed faintly, flickering just enough to make shadows move where nothing should be moving. The sound wasn't loud, but it felt amplified in that silence. I could hear my own breath echo off the walls, like the building was listening. I passed the candy aisle, then the old drinks cooler, its door hanging open, unplugged, but strangely clean. Everything had this abandoned, staged feel, like someone had recreated the store from memory, but missed the details that make a place feel alive. In the back corner, the checkout counter was still intact. The register was there, shut tight. No signs of forced entry, no wires exposed. Nothing to explain why the lights were on. I reached out, touched the counter surface. It was cold, but not dusty. Something wasn't right. That's when I noticed the security camera in the ceiling. It was pointed directly at me. I could swear it shifted slightly when I looked up. Its red light blinked, steady, then off, then steady again. I started backing away. Not running, not panicking, but every part of me knew I needed to leave. I turned toward the front. The door had closed. I didn't hear it. I didn't see it move, but it was shut. And then behind me, one of the lights flickered, not like a failing bulb, but like something had passed underneath it. I wasn't sure anymore if I was alone. I kept moving, no destination in mind, just the urge to find something, anything that explained what was happening. Every shelf I passed looked untouched, yet too precise. The way the items were stacked didn't feel commercial. It felt curated, for me. The back of the store had a narrow hallway I hadn't thought about in years. My uncle kept supplies and old receipts there, maybe a fridge that never worked. The light overhead buzzed louder as I walked down it, like it was following me. At the end was a small door, slightly open. I pushed it gently. Inside was a cramped office, bare except for a metal desk, a worn chair, and a monitor glowing softly in the dark. It was on. I don't know how that was possible. I hadn't seen any routers or power strips, but it was running. The screen showed footage from the store's main floor just a moment ago. Me, walking in, same hoodie, same posture. I moved the mouse. The video skipped back. Another recording began. A different person, older, standing near the door, frozen in place. The timestamp said it was 3 days ago. I clicked forward. Another figure. A week back, same thing. Always one person. Always at night. I checked the drawers. Mostly empty, except for a few crumpled receipts. Some were blank. Others listed strange entries. No prices, just words like arrival, contact, or seen. One had today's date. It listed the time I entered, the item, presence. That word unsettled me more than anything else I'd seen. I stepped away, suddenly aware of my own breathing. It felt too loud, like even the air was listening now. I turned back to the monitor. The feed had changed. It was no longer showing the store. It was showing my apartment. The couch I'd left less than an hour ago. My kitchen light, still on. My front door. And then, something moved barely by the hallway. A shadow. Too slow, too smooth. Like someone walking in without sound. I didn't realize I was backing up until I bumped into the wall. I wasn't just being watched. I'd been watched for a long time. I didn't wait to see what else the screen would show. I left the office and moved fast toward the front, trying not to run, though everything in me was screaming to get out. The store wasn't just awake, it was aware. And it didn't feel like I'd walked in by chance. It felt like something had opened that door for me. Like I had followed a path that was never mine to begin with. As I passed the aisles again, things looked different. Items were missing. Shelves had shifted. Or maybe I just missed the details before. Maybe I wasn't meant to see them until now. I caught a reflection in one of the freezer doors, my own face, pale and drawn. But behind me something seemed to move. I turned, nothing. I made it to the front. The door was still shut. I pulled, locked, not jammed locked, from the outside. The lights above me dimmed for a few seconds, and in that moment, I felt the weight of the place pressing against me. Not physically, not even spatially, but psychologically, like I wasn't alone inside my own mind. Something knew I was there, and worse, it had been expecting me. My phone buzzed. I nearly dropped it. A new alert. Motion detected. Same camera. Same store. Only now the image showed me. Still. Standing near the door. It was live. I pressed my face to the glass, searching for anything outside. A car. A person. A sign of movement. Nothing. The street was darker than before. I knocked, yelled. My voice didn't echo right. It felt like the store absorbed it. Swallowed it. Then behind me, the radio crackled. It hadn't been on, but it was now. And it was playing something low, almost a whisper. A voice. Mine, from earlier. Just 10 minutes, it repeated, again and again. My own voice echoing back at me from the static. I turned slowly. Every light in the store was on now. Every bulb glowing too bright. The place was no longer pretending to be asleep. When the door finally clicked and opened without anyone touching it, I didn't hesitate. I stepped out into the night and didn't look back. But I don't think I left it behind. Some nights when I walk past glass, I don't see myself. I see that store. Still open. I booked the house on a whim. 3 days off, no emails, no calls, just quiet. I'd been buried in work for months, and the idea of total silence in a remote place sounded like medicine. It was a simple listing. No flashy pictures, just a wooden cabin nestled in the woods, about an hour outside town. No neighbors, no traffic. That was the point. The drive up was peaceful. The road curved through stretches of forest that seemed untouched for decades. I didn't pass a single car for the last 15 miles. Just trees and fading sunlight. By the time I arrived, the air had cooled, and the wind made the trees lean and creak like they were settling in for the night. The house looked exactly like the photos, modest, well-built, sitting quietly in a clearing. One floor, wide porch, a few chairs out front. The key was exactly where the host said it'd be, under a stone shaped like a boot by the steps. Inside, everything was in perfect order. Not spotless, not luxurious, just tidy, comfortable, lived in, but not recently. The smell of old wood and something faintly floral hung in the air. The furniture had a timeless feel to it, nothing too new, nothing too antique. Curtains drawn halfway. Every light switch worked. I walked through each room slowly, half expecting something to be off, but it wasn't. It was quiet, peaceful. The kitchen had a small welcome basket with tea and a note that just said, "Rest well." The handwriting was smooth, deliberate, no signature. I set my bags down in the bedroom. Queen bed, thick mattress, heavy quilt. The window looked out onto the woods. No curtains, just dark trees staring back. I didn't mind. That's why I came. I sat on the porch as the last of the light disappeared. No mosquitoes. No traffic. Just the creak of the wood under my feet and the distant sound of leaves brushing each other like whispers. I could hear my breathing. That was new. It felt like the house had been waiting. Like I hadn't just rented it, but taken a turn in something already in motion. Still, I felt safe. I was sure of it, at least that first night. The first morning was quiet. I woke up rested, which almost surprised me. The kind of sleep you only get in places far from everything. The bedroom was dim, soft light pushing through the trees outside. The air felt cooler than I expected, but not unpleasant. I made coffee and sat by the window, listening to nothing. There wasn't even birdsong. Just wind, brushing the sides of the cabin like fingers. I felt good. Cleared out. Like I'd made the right decision coming here. It wasn't until late afternoon that I noticed the first change. The armchair in the living room had moved, not far. Just a few inches to the left, angled slightly toward the fireplace. I stood there looking at it, trying to remember if I'd moved it the night before. Maybe I had. Maybe when I set my bag down, or when I passed through half asleep. I adjusted it back and moved on. Later, in the kitchen, I reached for a drawer to get a spoon and found it empty. I opened the one below it, and there were all the utensils. Neatly arranged, labeled. That drawer had been for towels yesterday. I was almost sure. Small things, nothing alarming. But they kept piling up. A lamp I didn't recognize near the hallway. An extra pillow on the bed that hadn't been there the night before. Curtains drawn tighter than I remembered closing them. I wasn't afraid, just thrown off. Like the house had its own rhythm and I was slightly out of step. That night, I went to bed earlier. The quiet outside felt heavier. I turned off the lights and lay still, trying to listen beyond the walls. At some point during the night, I rolled over and felt something under my pillow. I reached for it slowly. It was a piece of paper, thick, folded once. No name, no decoration. Just one sentence written in a clean, neat hand. Take care of what's with you. I sat up, read it twice. My first instinct was to laugh, brush it off. Some leftover note from a previous guest. Nothing serious, but the paper was cold. Like it hadn't been there long, like someone had just placed it. By the third day, I stopped trying to explain it. Things weren't staying where I left them. Doors I hadn't touched were half closed. The clock in the kitchen reset twice. At first I thought it was a power issue, but none of the lights flickered. The fridge stayed cold. Nothing else failed, just the clock. I started taking pictures on my phone, not for proof, just for myself. A frame here, a bookshelf there, comparing them each morning. And yes, they changed, subtly, predictably. The book spines shuffled out of alphabetical order. The small rug at the entryway rotated ever so slightly. The reflection in the mirror near the bathroom didn't always match my posture. One afternoon I tried to open the front door to get some fresh air. It resisted, not locked, but heavy, like something pressed back from the other side. I paused, waited, then it gave way with no sound. The wind outside had changed too. It no longer sounded like leaves. It pulsed in waves, almost like breathing. Back inside, I tried to distract myself. I turned on the television. Just static. But after a moment, a grainy image appeared. A room, the same layout, same couch, but not the same house. It was too clean, too staged. I stood up and realized it was showing this living room, but not exactly as it was now. The curtains were different. The rug was blue. The chair was in the wrong spot, and the figure on the couch wasn't moving. I turned the TV off and waited, listening to the silence. That night I barely slept. Not from fear, but from anticipation. The kind that coils slowly in your stomach. The kind that doesn't want you to leave. When I woke up the next morning, the kitchen was rearranged. Completely. Cups and plates in different cabinets. The welcome basket was gone. On the fridge was a small sticker that hadn't been there before. It said, Day 4, but I was certain this was only the 3rd. I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was tracking me. Not just changing things, but responding to me. Testing what I'd notice, what I'd ignore. I stopped trying to keep up. Instead, I started looking. Really looking. That morning, I pulled open every drawer, checked behind every piece of furniture. Most of it was ordinary. Blankets, candles, random kitchen stuff. But in the hallway closet, behind a stack of old magazines, I found a narrow slit in the wall. Not a crack, more like a panel that had been carefully resealed. I pried it open with a butter knife. Inside was a notebook. No cover, just yellowed pages bound by thin cord. The first page had no name. Just a date from nearly 10 years ago. The entries weren't long. Some were just single lines. Heard movement in the attic. Doors don't match anymore. Lights stayed on when I cut the breaker. They came from different hands, different handwriting, different pens. Dozens of entries scattered across years. Some ended mid-sentence. Some stopped entirely with nothing after. There was a pattern. Each person seemed to stay no more than 4 days. The last entry was dated exactly 3 days before I arrived. It read, Tomorrow's mine. I packed quickly. I didn't care about leaving food behind or folding clothes. I just needed to be gone. Every room felt tighter, like the walls had leaned inward overnight. I avoided the mirrors. I didn't want to see if they still showed me. When I opened the front door, it led to a hallway. A hallway that didn't exist before. Wooden floor, white walls, no windows. I stepped back, closed the door, opened it again. Same thing. I tried the back door. Same hallway. It curved slightly to the right, disappearing into soft shadows. I walked through the kitchen, trying to find an exit that hadn't changed. But every doorway took me back to a different part of the house. The rooms weren't connecting the way they used to. The living room was now beside the bathroom. The bedroom led to the kitchen. The porch was gone. The lights dimmed all at once. Not off just enough to lose detail. Every object now looked slightly unfamiliar. The fridge had a different handle. The curtains weren't mine. The welcome basket was back, but it held nothing but keys. Dozens of keys. Then I heard footsteps. Not heavy, not rushed, measured. Inside the house, but never approaching. Just circling. I pressed myself against the wall, listening to the pattern. It matched mine. I ran to the bedroom. The window wouldn't open. Not jam sealed. I pounded on it until my knuckles went numb. Then I heard it, tires on gravel. A car. Someone was arriving. The house was quiet now. Waiting again. I moved to the living room, toward the front window. The scuff marks on the floor were gone. Everything was in place. Reset. A door opened at the far end of the hallway. Not one I recognized. A sliver of light stretched across the floor. Then a shadow passed through it, slow, calm, entering the house. Not me, someone new. I backed away from the window, deeper into the house. I understand now. The house doesn't trap you. It moves you aside. It rotates its guests. Tomorrow, I'll be gone, but not far. I'll still be inside, waiting my turn again. If you've ever gone through something similar, or know someone who has, leave a comment below. If you like the video, please subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what you thought about the stories and where you're watching from. It really helps. New ones are always on the way, every week. The next story could be yours.